guys, you're welcome back again to my channel. Today let's prepare delicious Ogbono Okro soup. I'm using these proteins. This is Titus fish. You can use Titus or mackerel fish, and I'm also using beef. This is fresh goat meat. You can use any type of beef, cow meat, goat meat, or any. So I'm going to clean it all up, of course, and I use this ogbono. This is fresh ogbono. I'm also cleaning it up, and this is dry fish. This dry fish is the black one. This is dried fish, which is very delicious for this soup. And I'm also using stock fish. So after washing this fish, I clean it all up and I seasoned it with onion, Maggi cubes, salt, and I added water and allowed it to cook. After cooking this fish, I separated it from the pot, of course, because I'll also be using this stock to continue the process. I cooked this fish together with the beef I washed earlier. So after separating the fish, I'm just left with the beef in the pot. Then I added the stock fish, which I already washed with clean water. I added the stock fish into this pot and added extra water to cook it further for a couple of minutes while I prepped the ogbono. After cleaning the ogbono, I added it into the blender and I blended it so it can be really smooth, because this ogbono has to be very smooth, of course. I'm also using crayfish for this soup, so I cleaned the crayfish and I added it into the ogbono to grind together. But of course, guys, this soup is very special because I'm using Ogiri okpei. This is the Ogiri okpei. It's really important for this soup. Just one I'm using. You can use 1.5 if you want, but one is enough. And I'm using 2 Scotch bonnet pepper, and this is Uziza seed. Uziza seed is very important for this recipe, guys. The taste is so different in ogbono soup. If you haven't tried that before, it's a must try. So I added everything to the blender and blended together while I washed the okra. This soup is Ogbono Okro soup, of course. So I'll be adding okra to this soup. So I already soaked this okra in the water for a couple of minutes. Then I use the water to wash it thoroughly while I use knife to cut it. I normally use knife to cut the okra while I add some of the okra to the blender and also blend it. Well, after that, I put my pan on fire, added my oil. This is palm oil, and I turned off the heat as soon as the oil got hot. And now I added the ogbono into the oil. This is the ogbono I already grinded earlier. I added it into the oil and mixed thoroughly. Don't forget I turned off the heat. So this is just hot oil mixed together with ogbono. So I mixed everything thoroughly. You can add less oil if you want, but I love my soup really, colorful and yummy. So I mixed thoroughly and added a little quantity of the stock. That's the water from the fish and meat I cooked earlier. I added little quantity of it and I mixed thoroughly, and then turn back the heat on. As you can see, the gas is now on, and I'm cooking this together while I'm mixing very well, because I don't want any lumps in this soup and I want it to really come out so well. So I mixed thoroughly with my spoon. After mixing, I added this blended okra, Ogiri okpei, and Cameroon pepper. This mixture I just added is just 2 pieces of okra I blended together with Ogiri okpei, the black Ogiri okpei I showed you guys earlier. I mixed thoroughly and added the remaining stock and fish and the meat. This is the proteins. I just added everything into the pan. As you can see, this stock fish is already cooked and the meat is so soft already. So I added little water to loosen up the soup a bit, and I mixed well. As you can see, everything is now coming up so well. And this is just little chunks of fresh pepper I added. I didn't want this pepper to be so smooth because not everyone eats pepper, and Ariana, of course, she's just so little, she doesn't really like pepper. So I usually make the pepper this size so I can really find it in the soup when scooping and avoid it for her. So you can add any type of pepper you want. I added a little salt because I tasted it and I needed to add salt. Then I mixed it thoroughly. If you see the way I'm mixing it, of course you will see I'm mixing it seriously because I don't want any lumps or any of the ingredients to be hanging around the pot instead of mixing properly. So I mixed it so well so they can marry each other and combine together. Don't forget, guys, you can add any protein of your choice. If you have more, you can add, but these few ingredients I'm using is just what I had available. Before adding the next ingredient, I allow this soup to boil for a while. As you can see, it's bubbling. You can see the bubbles up. It's so thick. It's drawing so well. The ogbono is so good. And but I added a lot of water. You can see it's still thick and drawing. Everything is just so good. So cooking it together with this stockfish and beef, the goat meat I added earlier, it's just so lovely because, as you know, it's going to combine with the soup and tastes so good. So all the ingredients is already in here. The Uziza seed I added is very delicious because it makes this soup taste different. So this is the point I add the dry fish I showed you guys earlier. I washed it thoroughly and deboned it and then added it to the pot. Of course, guys, I added just one. You can use more than one if you want to. I also wanted to use two at the beginning, but I ended up using just one of these black fish. Why? Because of course I added other proteins and I felt like it's already okay. So the stockfish I added and the beef and the fresh fish I'm using, of course, is enough. So that was the reason I added just one. You can add more if you have, like I said earlier. So after this, the next step, I allowed it to boil for a while. Then I added okro. This is the fresh okro. I used knife to cut. As you can see the way I cut it, it's looking really round. I didn't use the grater because I wanted to use knife because it's just better, preferably. You can do any of that of your choice if you want to use the grater or the knife. So I sprinkled a little bit of crayfish powder and then I added water and mixed everything together. As you can see, I mixed it thoroughly so well to make sure there's no lumps anywhere. And after a few seconds, I added the veggies. This is fresh spinach. This spinach was shredded to pieces. As you can see, you can use ugu leaf or other vegetables of your choice depending on what you have, but of course here in Germany seeing ugu leaf is like impossible. So I added this spinach, this shredded spinach, while I added the fresh fish I cooked earlier. I mix everything together, the fish, the beef, the vegetable, everything is already inside the pot. So I mix thoroughly, and carefully because I didn't want this fresh fish to break or pieces. That was the reason I added it last. This mackerel fish or Titus fish, if you are using Titus or mackerel fish, make sure to add it last so it doesn't pieces. So I mixed thoroughly and still carefully, Everything was so in order. The scent at this point, guys, if you add Uziza to your soup, you should already know that by now the Uziza and the Ogiri okpei you added is already making your soup taste different. And apart from that, the aroma everywhere is just so delicious. So I mixed really well, allowed it to settle for a few seconds, then I turned off the heat because I didn't want my okra and every other thing to overcook. Everything I needed to cook in this soup already cooked earlier, and the okra I added last, I didn't want it to overcook. So at this point I already turned off the heat. As you can see, the heat is off. The gas, I turned it off, and it's just the hotness or the heat from the pot that is just boiling up in the pot and cooking the veggies. So at this point you can serve this soup with any carbohydrate of your choice: semovita, fufu, pounded yam, gari, but of course my best for this soup is gari. I love using gari to eat this soup. This Ogbono Okro soup prepared with Uziza is very delicious, and if you haven't tried this out, you need to try it out, guys. Not just your random ogbono you are always preparing all the time. This is different. The taste is different. You can even add more proteins or types of fish or meat. Everything works. Like I said, all of this protein I used is so delicious, and you can taste all of them in this soup at the same time. You can taste the Uziza, you can taste everything, and the Ogbono, which is the main ingredient, is still the highlight of this soup, of course. So everything was so lovely, everyone enjoyed this soup, and of course I would love you guys to try it out. Thank you so much for watching. See you on my next one. Bye bye.